All right, Bokeh Podcast listeners, we are back for another episode, and that almost sounded like I was starting to sing it, Carly. Carly Someplace, as we know and dearly love the wonderful brand, is back with us for a third episode. You're one of, I think, just maybe 2 or 3 people out of 360 plus episodes that we've done on the show that has been back for a third time. You were with us back in episode 84 and 109, so that's some time ago.
Yeah, definitely over a year ago.
I mean, yeah, probably well over. Although we have been putting a lot of content out in the last year and a half or so. This is going to be, as I record it and store it on my computer, I think episode 367.
Woo!
So that it was
200 something episodes
exactly,
later.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, our format has changed a little bit since we last had you on. So first of all, we're going to link to those episodes in the show notes for everybody listening in. You want to get to know Carly a little bit, go back and listen to those episodes, and forgive me ahead of time for my lack of experience at that point as an interviewer.
We were having so much fun. It's okay.
Well, yeah, I know that you will have something of value to add to our listeners' lives. So we'll definitely link to those shows, or those episodes, I should say, in the show notes, bokehpodcast.com. Shout out to Haley for putting the show notes together for everyone. But I want to jump right into this because we have a lot to cover. And the first thing, this is a kind of a newer question, certainly since you've been on and even this year. Talk to me about customer experience. Is there a particular principle that has made a big difference as a wedding and boudoir photographer in bringing a positive customer experience to your clients?
Yeah. So I actually think one of my biggest, we'll call it influences into having the best experience for my clients is by just niching down. So I pretty much only shoot boudoir and couples. And couples does obviously encompass a couple things. I shoot engagements. I will shoot maternity for some clients, and I shoot weddings. And so, but by only focusing on those things, I think that I can give people a better experience, specifically with boudoir. It's 90% of my business right now. Yeah. And so I don't let myself get sidetracked. I'm not trying to do 85 things well. I'm trying to do 4 things really well, and I can give it my all. And I think that's a huge, huge thing to be able to give your clients the best experience they can, is that you're focused on the one thing that they're hiring you for.
Yeah. And, first of all, you summed that up beautifully.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. Yeah, that was very concise. But it reminds me of a point of conversation, or points of conversation ultimately, that I've been having with these brand position consultations I've been doing for the podcast. I'm speaking to the benefits of having a clear and distinct brand position. We're going to get to yours in just a second, but what that ultimately, a clear and distinct brand position, one of the things that it ultimately enables is a more focused, certainly marketing effort, because you have a very clear message. You're not juggling 50 different messages because you offer 50 different services. You've got a clear and distinct message, and you can build all of your advertising and marketing efforts around that message. But then 2, it also enables a more efficient kind of day-to-day existence. And I know that you're busy, Carly. You travel quite a bit, but
I do.
But if you were juggling multiple services or genres under your brand's umbrella, imagine how much crazier it could be. I think that that focusing on one, maybe 2 things encourages focus in the way that we spend our time. And as business owners who want to have a life, you and I were talking about this before we started recording, like I don't want to work 60, 80 hours a week, but if I'm shooting 5 different types of photography, I'm naturally encouraging a lack of efficiency because now I have so many different balls to juggle. Anyway, you said that way more concisely, but I just wanted to at least share my thoughts as you were saying that. But let's actually jump to that.
It makes it easier.
Well, and brand position. So just briefly sum up your brand's brand position, the position statement that represents the UVP, the unique value proposition.
Yeah. So my business is Someplace Images, and Someplace Images is built around redefining and revealing love and self-love through passion, laughter, and intimate photography, with the goal of creating touchable, visible monuments to life-changing moments. So I heavily, it's a lot. It's a big mouthful.
Okay. Is this on your site? Because I'm on your website. By the way, everybody listening in, it's someplaceimages.com. Whereabouts is it on your site?
It is not actually on my site. It's a combination of, it's something that I'm bringing back into my site because essentially I have two unique brands on my website, but that's combining them together. So those are the morals and values that I want between both my boudoir and my weddings. So that's like my overall brand position. But then when you look into my sub brand positions on that website, so if you were to click on boudoir or you were to click on weddings, it's going to be those similar word. That's my overall brand position.
Okay.
And then my sub brands have their own sum up, which is kind of in between, not in between, but combines both of those or combines into all of that.
Okay. Yeah. And I was actually, as you were talking, I clicked on the boudoir section just to go take a look at the copy there, and a video started playing. Haley will probably edit that out of the audio. So sorry about that in case that's still in there.
My website is constantly on mute when I go to it because I can't stand listening to myself over and over and over again. And my phenomenal web designer, bless her, she knows every single word of that video.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Well, so, there's something certainly valuable in kind of sharing yourself on a more personal level through video. But I just wanted to go see the copy there. So will you just one more time, will you kind of run that sentence or paragraph back by me as far as the brand position statement's concerned? Because I want to break this down a little bit for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So Someplace Images is built around redefining and revealing love and self-love through passion, laughter, and intimate photography with the goal of creating touchable, visible monuments to those life-changing moments.
Interesting. Okay, so the monuments being, I'm assuming, the photographs in the end. Is that right?
Yep. And tactile, obviously. So if you've listened to my past episodes, I talk about IPS. I heavily believe in printed photographs, and it is, I don't do digitals only. I don't do any of that stuff. So I want people to have something that they can touch and feel to remember how they felt on that day, whether that day is their wedding day or that day is the day that they got the courage to do a boudoir session. And so I want them to be able to open a book or an album and have that just like rush back of how they felt in that moment. And so those are, I use my craft to create physical products, and that's really, really important to me.
But monuments to those special occasions, that's an interesting way of phrasing that. It's beautiful, though. And to your point, episode 109, for anybody wanting kind of an introduction, a crash course on IPS, make sure you do go listen to that episode, because it's pretty incredible, actually, what Carly is generating revenue-wise as a result of IPS.
Yes.
I still look back at my photography career, shooting for about a decade, shooting weddings for about a decade, and I cringe a little bit thinking about how much I missed out on as a result of not doing IPS, revenue-wise, how much I missed out on. And so anyway, make sure you go check that out. Everybody listening in, 109, episode 109, we'll link to that in the show notes. But I appreciate you sharing that brand position statement with us. Let's talk about time. And, as business owners, obviously things can get a little bit busy. We were talking about this a second ago, but and especially in your world, you're traveling so much. You were talking about your upcoming travel schedule before we started recording. How do you create space for yourself within that travel or while you're home so that you don't get overwhelmed, you don't get burnt out? Is there a particular tip or technique when it comes to managing time that you found valuable?
Yeah. So I have essentially a two-part answer for this. So I had like a big, I don't want to call it a breakdown, about 6 months ago that I wasn't really spending any time on myself.
Okay.
And so one of my favorite things ever to do is read. And when I looked back through mostly 2018 that I was looking at, or even the first part of 2019, I had only read like 4 books. And so just for an average, I probably read close to 70 or 80 books a year.
Whoa.
So for me is
that fiction or nonfiction or both?
Both. Mostly fiction. I read a lot of fiction.
Okay.
But fiction for like my brain to just explore. That's like my happy place.
Yeah.
Nonfiction. I don't want to say I struggle through business books. But you're not supposed to be able to absorb business books as fast as I can absorb fiction. And so there's lessons in those where, I mean, obviously there's lessons in fiction too, but it's not practical things of like, this is how you need to set your bank accounts up, which is boring. But so I I just had like a freak out moment, and I sat down and I told my mom, I was like, I just need new books. So we went book shopping, and I bought like 35 new books.
Whoa.
And I've gotten through probably 15 of those. Okay. And then I've read another, I read an entire series. I think I'm on book 15, and book 16 comes out in a couple months. And so I've just, kind of poured through those, and I've been really making time for myself in the evening before I go to bed to read, even if it's 5 pages, but it's usually like 70 or 100. And so making that time for myself just to let my brain
wind down.
And wander and explore, because I think my favorite thing about fantasy and fiction is that I'm in a different place. And I get to, see all of these things just with my imagination, and pull in, my own artistic abilities of what my brain's capable of creating there. And so that's been hugely instrumental. And then about 3 weeks ago, I listened to The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Okay. And I started forcing myself out of bed prior to 6 a.m. every morning to get up and just write. So I don't touch my phone for the first hour that I've been up. This has just been for the last few weeks. And I mean, there are some exceptions to that, but like I get up and I make a cup of coffee and I journal, and that journal entry could be a to-do list depending on what's weighing heavy on my brain, or it could be, this morning I spent time writing a keynote speech that I'm working on. It could be thoughts for, just all of these different things that I have going on. It could be, love letters to my friends or love letters to myself or anything like that. And so that's been honestly, I don't want to say life-changing, but pretty life-changing. And I feel much more accomplished. I feel like my thoughts are more in order. Yeah. It's taking time for myself. And while it can in a lot of ways be business related, it feels like I'm more on track. And then with me reading at night, it lets me just calm down. And like I said, escape to, another world of some variety. And so that's been really, both of those things have been really good for me. So just taking some extra time for myself in the mornings and the evenings, because my schedule is kind of all over the place with my travel schedule. And so, but that's something that I can do absolutely anywhere. And that doesn't have to be, while I'm at home or while I'm, doing anything. So I think that that's been really great for me.
Well, I found a similar benefit that you're describing in the process of writing. I personally tend to, I can write much quicker, or I should say type much quicker than I can handwrite. As much as I have an interest in the tangible process of writing in a journal, even just typing, but I have a section in Evernote for journaling. And whether I go there, once a week or once a month or once a year, whatever it might be, just occasionally checking in. Taking that time is definitely therapeutic, and it's nice to just kind of unload a little bit. And so I would highly encourage everyone to kind of experiment with that if they haven't before. And you said that the book is called The 5-Second Rule?
The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Okay. And then the other thing, and that plays into kind of what you're saying with, typing, I've been using just my Google Docs and like voice transcribing. So if I have all these thoughts and I'm upset or anything, I'll literally open Google Docs and hit that little microphone button and just talk to myself and organize them. And it's pretty good. It's got some of the best voice transcribing that I've worked with so far. And it's been. Are
you on an iPhone?
I am on an iPhone.
So are you doing that through your iPhone, or are you doing it through your computer?
Through my iPhone. Yep.
Interesting.
Nope, through my iPhone. And it's been super instrumental, because even if I have something, if I'm driving, I can do it. If I'm trying to get all my thoughts out, I'm trying to do anything. And so if you don't love to journal, but you want to just speak out loud, spoken word type thing, that is something I'd highly recommend. And I mean, it's free within any Google account. So it's, cool. And it's all stored on the cloud and you can access it at any time. So that's been instrumental too. I use it more for the business side, but it's a good way to keep track of your thoughts in that format as well.
That's a really good tip. And then we'll also include the 5-second rule in our show notes. And by the way, for everybody listening in, if you haven't seen it yet, if you go to bokehbookclub.com, we've actually included some of the more popular books that our guests have recommended on the show. So you can go check that out too. Haley has put together a really great collection over there, but we'll certainly.
I feel like I'm going to need to check that out.
You might have to. Although I will say that probably 98%
mostly business books.
of them are either self-help or business books. Yes,
that's fair. That's fair. There's a place in time that I read those as well, but that's not my wind down in the evening book.
No, I totally get it. Talk to me about. Speaking of time management, outsourcing or delegating any part of your business. Are you doing any of this? And if so, what's the significance of it to your business?
Yeah. So I've tried a lot of things with outsourcing. So I have an assistant that manages my social media.
Okay.
So right now she is doing Pinterest and Instagram for me, my business Instagram, just scheduling, uploading, all of that stuff. She pulls a lot of my written content that I write anyways, but she's just recreating it for that platform, because we'll talk about this later, but Facebook is my majority platform. But I do still think that Instagram, you have to have stuff up there. you have to show the world that you're an alive and functioning photographer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I just use Instagram for. I don't get much business from it, but it's fine. It is, my online portfolio. It shows off my work. And so she manages that for me because it was a big stress for me trying to get all of that up there. She manages my Pinterest, which makes that super easy. And she's really amazing at that. And then I'm bringing on a ghostwriter. So excited for my blog.
Wow.
I hate blogging. I hate blogging so much. It's not even funny. I just have zero desire to do it. And I think that that's because I want to write like I speak. I'm a very big conversationalist. I talk a lot. And so when I do things like blog, I just get too caught up. And then I find that my blogs are 3,000 words long. And I'm like, oh my God, Carly, nobody wants to read this. So I've found a ghostwriter to write my blog. I've sent her a bunch of topics. She's working on different things like that. And then that's just going to help me because it is something that I know I should be doing for my business. I feel guilty not doing it for my business. But it's just something that doesn't bring me any joy. And she's obsessed with it. She's so excited. She's just beyond stoked. Yeah. And she's like, these topics are amazing. I'm like, great, go for it. So I have essentially two assistants, a ghostwriter, and then a social media assistant. So that's mainly where I outsource my stuff. So
where would you say that, or I guess roughly how many hours do you think that you save in a week with those two people in your life?
Oh my gosh. Well, every time I try to do Instagram posts, I get sucked into Tailwind for like an hour, and I usually create like 2 posts. So I would say Sarah posts 4 to 5 times a week for me. So I would say she's saving me 2 to 3 hours a week. And Dakota, I would say with the blogging again, because I get so too deep into it. Dakota's probably saving me a little bit more time, but like 3 to 4 hours a week, especially with the just like, laying out a blog and doing things like that, which again, zero desire to do those things. So I'm glad to have somebody who is so thrilled on it. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. And a great example for everybody too. I mean, as much as obviously I'm involved with Photographers Edit and we talk about the significance of delegating editing work, I love that we have examples here of other ways that you can delegate. And I tend to like to use the word delegate even more than outsource. Yes. Outsource seems to have had some negative connotation over the years, and it seems in many cases to be tied specifically to editing. When you talk to a photographer about the idea, delegation as a business owner, as a CEO, it's a really important part of growing our business. And it's a bit of a learning curve. You have to learn how to communicate what it is that you want. In fact, you first of all have to be clear about what it is that you want. Then you have to figure out how to communicate it effectively in a way that resonates with the other person. But the freedom that it can bring is quite significant. The ability to, or the way that it enables you to focus on those areas that you enjoy most, that you're strongest at.
Right.
So important.
It is so important. It's just let me take a step back from things that I know are important, but aren't my best forte. I mean, if I applied so much more time to them, I'm sure I could be better at them and maybe like them, but like, I don't
that's
love
not the
them.
point, right?
I love, exactly. I love doing what I love and I want to do what I love. So I'm going to hire somebody else to do the things I don't love.
Sure. Well, that's a great reminder for us. Talk to me about inspiration, though. And I wonder if this might be a rhetorical question. I have a guess as to where the conversation might go, but where do you find inspiration outside of photography or the photography industry?
Books. Books are definitely like like I said, I read 70 plus books a year.
Wow.
So like I said, fiction is everything. I'm a huge book nerd. I have multiple literary tattoos. I'm just like that's okay. But something else that I really love and I think kind of plays a little bit into photography, or at least like some aspects of just weddings and boudoir. I really love interior design.
Really?
Like I really love interior design. My parents just bought a new place. So I quote unquote live with my parents, because I travel about 10 months of the year. So there's not really a point in me having my own place. It would just be a very bad financial investment. So my parents just bought a new place, and we have a 4,000 square foot ranch house on 40 acres.
Whoa.
Which, and by 4,000, I really mean it's a weird, funky house. But I have gotten so much joy of just spending hours with my mom picking paint colors and getting to be inspired by different things and just interior designs. Spending hours on Pinterest pinning home things is something that can bring me a lot of inspiration. And even just the way that lighting is in pictures and different things like that gives me inspiration on how to use lighting on my clients, or how to use lighting in general, and what's going to change the mood of a room by using, different things like that. So I actually originally went to college to study interior design, and I ended up as a photographer. So,
no way.
I went to SCAD, and I was going with the intention of being an interior designer, and minoring in photography. And I ended up majoring in photography and minoring in printmaking and fashion. So that didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to.
You broke up there for just a second. You said what in fashion?
Oh. I minored in printmaking and fashion.
Oh, printmaking. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to go back really quickly though to the books though. How do you, on a practical level, how do you take the inspiration from those books and apply it to your business, or how does it get applied to your business?
Oh, I don't, that's a hard question. I think that I find books, because obviously they are just words.
Yeah.
I find that in the descriptions of characters, that's probably one of my biggest influences. And I think that it helps me, especially with boudoir, broach the subject of how to describe people without using physical descriptors, and the type of words that are used in a positive sense, in a negative sense, in a complimentary sense, and a lot of those things, and just the colorful language that can be all over, and how I can use that to create, I don't want to say personas, but create for my clients. I get a huge pull on words. There are some words like, I love the word whimsy so much, and just different things like that. And so books and their descriptions of characters have helped me, and influenced me in the ways that I can describe clients, and how I can tell them that I want to make them feel, or explain what I'm going to do, and different things like that, if that makes sense, because I rely so heavily on language to create in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that's a big influence on why I love books, because character descriptions are obviously huge.
Well, yeah, ultimately expansion of vocabulary. It's not only could it be beneficial in communicating with clients or potential clients, but even the way that we look at and think about the world, it seems like if you have an expanded vocabulary, your ability to do so in a more colorful manner might be encouraged by reading a bit more. Yes.
And books have always been, my parents used to be like, you just live in this fantasy world. And I've somehow translated it to my job, because I literally get to play dress up with people and take pictures of them. And it's the best thing ever. So, just building these scenarios, and in my spare time and some of my personal projects, I build these big, beautiful, whimsical dresses and gowns. Like I said, I was a fashion minor, and build these things. And I was doing that in high school, and I was doing that in middle school, and obviously in college. And those are things that books give me ideas for, to just create. And then I can take it from words in my head and put a visual image to it, which is where obviously photography comes in with that. So,
wow. Well, the encouragement there to read more, I think, is in all seriousness is it's a good reminder for me, nonetheless. I do find some benefit. You talk about winding down in the evening with some fiction. That's definitely been a way of relaxing for me. I have a Kindle Paperwhite, and it has, of course, the built-in light. The light's actually designed in such a way that it mirrors the way that we see light bouncing off the face of a book. Yeah. And I love that. And instead of having to look at this blue light that can affect our sleep, I can turn that down, and it actually, I find myself relaxing as I'm reading it. I'm able to kind of escape a little bit into the story, and then sleep. And it's wonderful. But I think too, I mean, I could stand to continue to improve my vocabulary, my writing skills. And I think reading, of course, is one of those ways that you can do that. So it's a good reminder for all of us. Yeah.
It's my favorite thing.
Let's jump into kind of our main topic at hand, though, destination photography, and more specifically, how to market for the sake of even being able to be a destination photographer. I mean, this is kind of a dream for many people, I think. And yet the question would be, where do I start? How do I even get to that place? Have you learned, I guess, this approach to marketing? Have you learned this from other people? Is this something you've kind of come up with on your own? Did you just know how to do it from the start? What did the beginning of this process look like?
Kind of a combination of a lot of things. So I've always known that I wanted to travel. I grew up in a small town, and I wanted to see the world more than anything. My first international trip, I went to India when I was 19.
Yeah. From
that moment, I was so absolutely hooked on travel. And I was like, how can I make this work in the world that I want? And I wanted to be a travel photographer for a while. And I realized I just really don't like landscapes. So that's not going to work out for me.
Sure.
So when I really started looking into it, and I stepped into Someplace Images being my business about 4 years ago, there's not very many businesses that are destination based or travel all the time. There's a few photographers who do frequently shoot destination weddings, and I started to pick their brains a lot. But what they're doing, because like I said, so now at this point, 90% of my business is boudoir, and they're not really doing anything similar to what I'm doing. So I kind of started to try and figure it out on my own. So I definitely listened to a lot of advice and took advice and how to kind of broach how I'm going to get clients in different places. And I listened to advice from that. And then I just kind of was like, okay, but how am I going to make this me? And how am I going to make this fit my business? So it's not a quick game at all to get into destinations, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. So that's a lot of, it was a combination of the two, of different influences and picking people's brains and then trying to figure out exactly how to make it work for my own business and the business plan that I wanted.
Which is so important. I mean, it might seem obvious to some, but iterating, learning as you go, making adjustments, capitalizing on the things that work, pushing aside the things that don't, and continuing to iterate. It's really, really important for us as business owners if we want to last. And so I'm glad that you bring that up. But you mentioned to me prior to us recording this that you had 5 different kind of main ideas that drive your marketing efforts. And so I want to just kind of run down these and let you sum up how each of them work for you. First, you mentioned first the idea of shoots on location. What does this mean? Can you explain this for our listeners?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I see is when browsing Instagram or browsing through anybody else, I will see people be like, I'm available worldwide. And a lot of people say that, but they never show anything except for where they are. So I think that having shoots on location when you travel anywhere, literally anywhere you go, you're going to the next town over, great, take some pictures. It's like, take some pictures of your partner or your kids or whatever you're going to do. And so I started setting up shoots on every single trip, I would go to anywhere and do shoots. And a lot of it started with reaching out to people doing shoots for free. But being able to show those different places really is a huge influence, because when I say I travel worldwide, people believe me, because they'll look at, back to my Instagram feed, it's not necessarily something that I manage, but Sarah tags all the places that I'm in. So one of my pictures this week is from Thailand and the other one is from there's all of these different things in these places that I've been, and I shoot in every single place that I go, no matter how mundane, quote unquote, that may seem.
Okay.
It's showing that you are in different places and available in different places and setting those up. And I know you and I have talked about this a couple, obviously on other podcasts. And I know you've had my very good friend Kurt Tubin on the podcast, and we talked about this. She and I did this massive road trip for almost 3 weeks, and we lived in my car. And we shot, I think, 5 different sessions in all these different amazing places. And those were we shot them for fun. Why not? But those are the type of things that then have brought me business, because people are like, oh my gosh, you've shot in Zion. I would love to get married there. Or I would really love to do a boudoir session in this location. And I see you've been there before. Because once they see that destination tagged, they think it's more approachable, that you would go back again or you would be there. So that's a huge part of it.
Well, and you mentioned tagging. We'll get to geotagging in a second, but is it a very complicated process? I mean, have you come up with a good workflow when it comes to finding somebody to shoot in these locations?
Reaching out on Instagram, throwing out a model call. We'll get to my Facebook group for sure in a little bit, but my Facebook group is a massive network that obviously it's taken time to build, but like literally if you start looking under a specific hashtag, so let's say I'm looking for in Nashville, Tennessee, I want somebody to shoot, go find bloggers, influencers, and maybe some of the smaller bloggers, some of these smaller influencers who don't have, 90,000 followers and probably have a photographer following them around anyways. Reach out to them and say, hey, I'm a photographer and I really want to shoot in your city. Could you show me cool places and I'll give you some photos in exchange? It's that simple. They're going to say yes to you.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's human connection. And then, hopefully at the end of that, then you've made a new friend. That's also somebody tagging your work in that city. And that's also somebody else using those images to show you off. And that's a huge networking thing. But yeah, going through Instagram, doing a model call on Facebook. I have friends from all over on Facebook. So even just on my personal Facebook, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to be in Nashville. Does anybody know anybody who might want photos? I'm looking to do a couple session, or I'm looking to do this. And use the internet, use the internet in the way that it was intended to connect people. And it's super powerful.
Well, and I can imagine we could literally stop here and
I could talk about that for days.
Well, but even if our listeners just went and did this very thing as they travel, and obviously not everybody travels as much as you do, you may have to make a little bit of an effort, but
that's true.
But if they just did this very thing, think of what it would do for their portfolio. And then that naturally leads us to the second point, which has to do with geotagging. Can you expound on this idea just a little bit?
Yeah. So I think that geotagging is important in a lot of ways. And also there's a lot. So I live in Lake Tahoe, quote unquote. I'm only here 2 months of the year. But I grew up in Lake Tahoe. Yeah. So when I geotag really broad places or if I'm targeting a new place or I'm targeting a specific venue or I'm shooting in a specific venue, I obviously tag that. I want a physical location, a venue or a restaurant or whatever to see that I've tagged them specifically. But when it comes to a lot of my outdoors stuff and stuff in nature, I don't necessarily geotag specifics because there's a lot of things that are getting ruined. So geotagging really has its pros and cons. So I would say that the pros of that, so you can tag Nashville as a city and people will pull up the Nashville tag. You don't have to tag a specific alleyway for people to understand that that's where you are. And that's what, Instagrammers, influencers, different things like that. There is a negative impact. There's an entire article I just read about the lavender fields in southern France getting trashed because people just want to come take photos and there's a lot of things like that, but you don't necessarily have to put your exact location. Right. So I'm pro geotagging in a broad sense, and I'm anti geotagging in a specific sense, unless it is a specific venue or something like that. So,
and for our listeners who don't have context, the reason you're geotagging is for what I would assume would be the obvious reason. You want people in that area to see your work to hopefully reach out to you, correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
You communicate so well. We're going to keep the conversation moving. This is such a wonderful, high energy conversation. So let's keep going though. The next point that you shared with me was the idea of planning travel in advance, which of course would naturally set you up for many things, including promoting where you'll be available for shoots. This will help you set up those shoots. Right. What does this look like on a very practical level for you?
Ooh, okay, so I was not this organized in 2019. I'm going to preface it with that right now. So anybody who's listening, don't think that I just magically appeared with this calendar. No, oh my gosh. So I, when I looked at last year and what I did with my travels, I took bookings in a lot of different places. I think I visited 16 or 17 cities last year and 3 or 4 countries. Wow. And so it was chaos. And because I had, big plans. I went to Bali in September with my girlfriends. I knew that was coming. I knew I was going to have that. And so I had these big plans of cool, I can plan things around this trip. But I would have somebody book and be like, hey, can you come to Seattle? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. I'll fit you in the next 3 months. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to fit this person in. And then when am I going to be able to go to Seattle? And should I fly up there? Should I drive? Should I do this? And the stress that put on me was not great. I definitely cried a lot over oh my God, I have to be in all of these places or I need to push people back. And I hate doing that. And And so what I did to set myself up for this year is I sat down, again, talking about my Facebook group. So in my Facebook group, I put a poll up to my essentially potential clients and said, where do you want to see me? What cities are you willing to travel to if I'm going to go there to book a session with me? Major cities. And I essentially said, I need more than 3 people in each city for me to take a booking there, for me to spend more than a few days there. But I'd really like to see what cities you want me in. And so I took that and I took my top 20 cities that they gave me, and I created a full travel calendar prior to, again, building around some big trips that I knew I had this year. I'm going to France in June. I will be in Iceland and Norway in November. So I built around those big trips and filled everything else in seasons that I want to visit places. So for example, I am not going to Texas in July, and I am going to New York in July. I do not want to go to New York in February. So I kind of created it around, I love the sunshine and I love warm weather.
Yeah.
So created my schedule around as traveling with the best seasons for places. And so I did that. And then I did my Black Friday sale. And my Black Friday sale, essentially people booked a city or they didn't. And the cities that didn't get booked, I took them off my calendar, and now I can fill them in with something else. So if something does come up or somebody says, hey, I have 4 girlfriends and we want to get together and book sessions in this city, I can be like, great, these are the dates that I have available to fit that travel in. But so it took a lot of planning, a lot of planning. And so that gives me a little bit more of a schedule. And then, like you said, so being able to work into those cities, I can promote myself now because I know where I'm going. I know exactly what my schedule looks like. Yeah. I could probably spit out the rest of my year for you right now. But it makes me feel like I have more control. It makes it so that my clients can see where I am. It makes everything's just more organized. And I think that that's been a huge thing. So if you're going somewhere and you know you're going somewhere, start reaching out to people months in advance.
Yeah. Well, but what I find interesting about this approach that you've taken is at least some of the travel is established before you have a shoot. You know where you're going, and then you schedule the shoot. And I think a lot of people just would kind of assume that they have to do it the other way around. They're waiting to book something until they go there. This is much more proactive in nature.
Yeah. And a lot of that was, though, that poll that I put up for my clients was okay, where do you want to see me? My top requested city was Chicago. I've never been to Chicago. So I was like, okay, here we go. So I go to Chicago in May, and I'm very excited. And so I, did things like that. And so while nobody had necessarily booked yet, I was like, okay, these are the cities you want. These are the cities that I'm going to go to. And it made a lot more sense for me to do it that way than try and just squeeze anything in. It can be, I'll throw this out there, a little bit of a double-edged sword. I had a friend get engaged, and she was like, so if we get married in 2020, I was like, I can't come. I'm sorry.
Because you already have your year planned out. Yeah.
My whole year is already booked out. I've already got sessions in all the cities that I'm going to. I've got contracts signed. I've got all of that other stuff. So there are some drawbacks, and it's, because life does happen. Yeah. But I've got, all of it going on, but it can have some very small drawbacks like that. Thankfully, my friends very much so understand my travel schedule. So there's that. But yeah, it made me feel much more organized. It gives me a lot of chance to market myself and to put things in motion for those cities months before I ever get there. So that's been massive in my life this year so far.
Well, and then you've alluded to the Facebook group multiple times now. So this is kind of the 4th talking point. But what is the significance of the Facebook group, and how did you go about creating it?
Okay, so my Facebook group is the main source of my business. I would say that I get 95 or above % of my clients, my boudoir clients, from my Facebook group. So I created a Facebook group about 3 years ago, and it was when I essentially first started shooting boudoir, and there were quite a few women in my group who wanted to be able to share their images with others, but didn't want their family or their whole entire Facebook community to see it if they were going to post it on their newsfeed. So I essentially created this group as a safe space for people to share. And then it kind of exploded. Literally. I went from 430 members in a day to 3,500 members in a day.
Whoa.
So I had run a contest. I did not think it would be as popular as it was. I was absolutely shocked. So I ran a contest, and I was like, hey, I'll give away a free session to, the person who adds in the most women that they think would appreciate this group. And I had some people adding in 450 people at a time. Facebook has changed. They don't let you do that anymore. But so this group kind of exploded, and it's just become this very big positive community of women. It is women only because it is a safe place for boudoir images. And so I now have over 5,000 members in it. I probably spend close to 40 hours a week in my Facebook group.
Wow.
It's definitely a full-time job.
Wow.
But that is, I don't want to say it's constant marketing, but it's constant marketing.
Oh,
everything
sure.
everything I post, people either want to hear, and I believe you and I've discussed this before, how important it is to be seen as like the face of your business and be in front of whatever. And so people want to know me. And so, I rotate between just sharing, other women who've had sessions and all of this other stuff. And then sharing posts about me or talking about my travels or even struggles that I have with my own body, all of this other stuff. I've essentially like this group is like a giant diary for all of these women. And it's a thriving community. It's so positive. It's so amazing. And I think that Facebook groups are really something that is key to destinations, whether it be with brides or whether it be with boudoir or maternity clients or whatever you want it to be. It's a specific way to market to people who are all over the place. And they can add their friends in, and their friends don't always live in the same city as them. Their friends don't always live in the same state as them or the same country. And so it's been, I have women in there who are like, oh my gosh, when are you coming to insert city here? And I'll be like, great, these are the dates that I have for it and stuff like that. And then they'll be like, oh my gosh, let me add in all of my friends. And then they'll pull in more of their friends that live in that city or anything like that. And so it's been insane in a lot of ways.
Wow. How would you just on a 5,000 member group probably sounds like just an overwhelming concept to somebody, but if they wanted to do this on a smaller scale, what's the first step for one of our listeners to create one of these?
The first step is to add in your clients who are just passionate about your brand and passionate about your work. Step one.
and so if I'm going to play the cynic here for a second, but people are busy with 68,000 other things. How do you add enough value to a group like this for people to want to not only be part of the group, number one, but actually to be engaged enough then for it to benefit your business?
So I think that, so we'll talk about it in the sense of boudoir, because obviously that's what my expertise is in.
Sure.
So in that sense, I created this community as a safe space. There's a lot of talk about women's bodies. There's a lot of talk about all of these things going on in the world right now. And self-love and body positivity. And those are all hot topics. So when people come into my group, those are things that we're talking about every single day. But I'm not the only one creating conversation in this group. There are so many people who are talking about their bodies, their struggles, things that they're doing. And so in that capacity, you're opening up just a space. And no matter what your space is going to be, it needs to be a safe space for your clients. So if you have wedding clients and you want to have a group of all your current and your past brides, or if you want to have anything like that, it's a safe space where they can rant about their mother-in-law. They can, do these things or ask for advice or anything like this. And when you're creating a community of something that somebody has commonality, yes, you have to have the initiative to be the conversation starter and to start those conversations, but you also need to just give people a space where that they can ask questions and that they can have those conversations themselves, because a lot of people are afraid to ask questions. This is something that I've found absolutely in business, even just in life. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions for scorn or feedback or anything like this. And when you make this a safe space, anything a safe space for those questions to be asked, people are more encouraged to do so. So community creates itself if you give them a common thread. And so whatever your common thread is going to be, that's what you're providing value with.
Huh. That's interesting. So you kind of create the conversation and let them take it from there.
Exactly.
If we were to kind of sum it up briefly, that's fascinating. Wow. And I think we could just kind of park there for a while. But I know that you've got one more point here to share, and that is Facebook ads. Now, it seems like, you talk about the significance of organic growth of your business through your Facebook group. There's part of me that might just naturally ask, well, why Facebook ads on top of that? Have you figured out a way for these to coexist? Do they benefit each other? What does it look like?
They do. I am in a Facebook ads course with Kendra, who you had on a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
She's a genius and I love her. I'm improving on my Facebook ads. So I will say that it is a constant process. Facebook ads change constantly.
Right.
I've definitely had Facebook ads that are highly successful, and I've had Facebook ads that are not successful at all. But how I meld these together is essentially my Facebook ads are, the biggest thing, again, specifically with boudoir, but I think also in wedding photography or in anything, though boudoir is a little bit heavier, is the like, no trust factor. So people are not going to book a session with me to essentially literally take their clothes off in front of me if they don't like me, if they don't know who I am, if they don't know that they can trust me. And that's a huge thing. So running a Facebook ad to be like, hey, I'm shooting boudoir sessions in Dallas, sign up. That's not going to work for me. So my ads are targeted to get people into my group, because then they're being welcomed into the fold of this community where people are positive and encouraging, and they're seeing all different types of bodies, where I'm sharing my work on a daily basis, where others are sharing their experiences with their bodies and having these conversations. And those are, so I'm targeting, I'm not targeting being like, hey, book with me. I'm targeting saying, welcome to my community. I want to bring you in. And how can we do that? And so for targeting my different cities, again, I know my travel calendar and schedule for the year. So I can say it right now and start a targeted Facebook ad towards Chicago just to get people into my group, because I have 4 sessions left in Chicago right now. And that's in 2 months. So if I'm targeting those ads and getting people just to come into that community, then they're going to see, oh my gosh, she's going to be in Chicago. And that makes them, at the very least, reach out. They might not book a session right then, because it takes 7 touch points for somebody to actually get in touch with you and actually want to book.
So they say, right?
Yes. So they say. So, I mean, I've used that. I've used Facebook ads in quite a few ways, but the end goal of, I'd say 90% of my Facebook ads is just to bring people into my community where they can figure out that they like me, understand that they can get to know me, and understand that they can trust me, and that I have an entire repertoire and 5,000 women backing me up for that statement.
What's the value proposition in one of those Facebook ads? If you don't mind sharing an example of like the copy that you might use, like what is the thing that's going to draw them in? What do you say?
Ooh, so I'm working on, this actually launches this week, so I'm super excited about it. So I'm running a self-love challenge right now. So this is a big thing for my Facebook group. So I'm running, I start a self-love challenge next week. So my copy in my ads is essentially being like, would you like to feel like more, would you like to love yourself more, is essentially a huge part, because which is a big statement. That's a very big statement.
But it's probably going to resonate with a lot of people, though, too. I mean, that's the thing about considering the copy that we use in our Facebook ads. We have to think about our target client, how they feel, what ultimately is going to resonate with them. We can't just base our copy on what we think or feel.
Right, exactly. And so I don't want to say it's pain points, but the biggest motivator for somebody to click on something is if they feel that you are describing them, and using those, we'll call them pain points, because that's what they are, is, do you love yourself enough? Do you know how to stand up for yourself? These are the type of words that I'm using, because those are all a very big part of self-love. And so what it's calling people to do is to join my self-love challenge, which ultimately puts them in my group. So those are the type of copy things that I'm using to do that. On a lighter note, I've definitely used Facebook ads of like, I lived in Maui for 6 weeks this past year. And so I had an ad running in Maui of like, you're in your tropical daydream. Do you want to do something outside of your comfort zone, or something you've always thought about, and essentially look like a mermaid on the beach and do different things like this? And so playing in, that's a very specific one, very specific to Maui, playing into that copy. But I booked multiple shoots from it. And so those are the type of things that you're playing into what people want and or what they think of themselves, specifically when it comes to self-love, et cetera, boudoir. So it is the pain points that are the easiest thing to work with on Facebook ads.
Absolutely. And by the way, shout out to Kendra Lanise, episode 322. We'll link to that in the show notes too.
She's fantastic. She's so fantastic.
Make sure if you're listening in now, make sure that if you haven't heard that episode, you go check that out as well. And Kendra is absolutely lovely, for sure. I've had the opportunity to hang out with her in person, and she really is just so great. There are certain people that have a wonderful energy about them, yourself included, by the way, Carly.
Thank you.
It's just nice to to be around somebody that has that kind of kindness or that kind of excitement about life. And Kendra is one of those people. So
she absolutely is. The first time that we spoke on the phone, we talked for like 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Which doesn't actually surprise me, but she's so incredibly talented. She knows what she's talking about with Facebook ads. And she's helped me clarify a lot on that of like, because I was like, I want people to get to my group. And she's like, so how would you like to do that? Let's start with her method, start at the end and work back to the beginning of actually placing the Facebook ad. And it's been completely invaluable to my business, just the work that she's put in with me. So that's huge shout out to Kendra.
Well, and speaking of invaluable, I mean, this really truly has been an invaluable conversation. I think this is great for our listeners. We've only ever really kind of touched on the topic of destination weddings, or destination work in general, maybe one or two times out of 360 plus episodes. So I'm glad that we came back to it. You've added massive amounts of value. I want to thank you for that, Carly.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you. Just
remind our listeners, if you don't mind, where they can follow you online, see what you're doing, see where you're traveling, where you're going to be next.
Right. So if you're a lady and you want to join my Facebook group, you're more than welcome to. I don't want to say I don't generally welcome photographers, but I try to, like, if you're going to be a photographer and you're going to be in my group, please be respectful of the fact that it is my clientele.
Yeah.
But I totally think that it is a community for all women. So there's that. So that is on Facebook. It's under Someplace Boudoir and Glamour. And in the section where it says, what's your email? Just tell me that you heard about me on the Bokeh Podcast and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
But there's always my website, someplaceimages.com. I have 2 Instagrams. My business Instagram is at Someplace Images, and my personal Instagram, which highlights a lot more of my actual travels of what I'm doing while I'm traveling, is Carly Someplace. And that's mainly it. I also have my Pinterest, which shows a ton of my boudoir work. Which is also Someplace Images. Those are the main places that people can find me.
Perfect. We'll link to all of that in the show notes. And for the third time, Carly, thank you so much for hanging out with us at the Bokeh Podcast.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Thank you so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast. Will you let us know what you thought by leaving a review of the podcast in the Apple Podcast app? And I'd love to hear from you personally with your thoughts about the podcast and suggestions about future topics and guests for the show. My email is nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Milu, the simplest way for photographers and coordinators to collaborate on shot lists and timelines for weddings, parties, and other amazing events. Visit Milu, MIILU.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the professional photographer. Visit photographersedit.com.